I think it's recording now. All right, good. So today I'm going to be talking about the college admissions process. I'm basically going to be breaking it down based on my experience. And just as a quick disclaimer, you do not have to take what I'm saying as absolutely true or anything. This is just my experience and what I thought worked. And I'll also be talking about mistakes I made or I've seen other people make that potentially hurt their college applications. And again, if I was in your position back then, I probably would be like, oh, so this random senior is kind of talking from a pedestal and telling everybody this is right, this is wrong. Why should I believe him? And I will address that question later on. But I do hope that everybody kind of benefits a little bit from this presentation. It's a bit long. And after each kind of section, I will have a section for Q&As and I'll have a bigger Q&A at the end. So how to build a foolproof timeline. So I know that's a little bit of a clickbaity title, but I think this timeline is pretty helpful. It's what worked for me. And I actually moved this timeline back like half a month to a month, just so that anybody who's actually going through the admissions process right now will have a little bit more buffer time. So the first question you need to ask when you're looking for building a timeline is how many schools you're applying to. So if you're applying to 20 plus schools, you need to start in like April or May. So like right now, if you haven't started yet, you're already a little bit late on the train. If you're applying to 15 to 20 schools, I'd recommend May or June. And if you're applying for less than 15, I would say no later than June. And the reason why I think this is important is you need to have a lot of buffer time. And at the end of the day, when you're applying to college, time is your best friend because time will help you figure out whether or not this essay is good. It'll give you a lot of time to think over. Sorry, I have to admit something in the room. It'll give you a lot of time to think over who you are as a person. So it's not just that if you're an amazing writer, you don't necessarily need time. You need time to really have a lot of introspection. I think that's really important. So basically tip number one, time is your best friend. Time solves all problems. Even if you're a bad writer, if you give it enough time, your writing will become generally okay. It will be pretty good. So the second question you need to ask yourself, and if I'm going too fast for anybody taking notes, just let me know in the chat or you can just shout it out. So the second question is, be honest, how good of a writer are you? So if you're a straight A student with like international writing awards, which is like less than 1% of applicants overall, you can spend more time on strategy, but majority of people are probably middle tier writers, so that's probably you. You should overestimate how long it'll take for you to write and stick to a very strict timeline. I think Nellie mentioned this a little bit earlier too. And if you're a bad writer, you should just start now. Your best bet is to have great content, even if you're stylistically not the best. So if you read a lot of these like admissions officers, AMAs on the internet, what you'll find is that they care the most about the story and the content you're trying to tell, as long as the writing quality is not distractingly bad. So if you're a really bad writer, just make sure you have a good story you can tell and kind of work slowly on making the writing sound good. But for most of you people who are middle tier writers, this is kind of what the timeline's oriented towards, because that was my situation too. So third question, how busy are you? Actually, this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you answer this question. You should treat college apps like 2 more extracurriculars at least if you want to succeed. And that means at least 2 to 3 hours a day of commitment. So generally speaking, you've probably heard of experiences where people wrote last minute essays at midnight and submitted and then got into that college. But those are rare case scenarios, and there's a strong level of self-selection bias or like survivorship bias in who reports that. So only people who have success stories with that will report that they got in those schools. And the vast majority of people who didn't succeed are not going to talk about it. So you have to always try to be early on everything, and you have to spend a lot of time on college apps. It's a huge time commitment. So spring into summer. So from May to June, I brainstormed as many topics as I could. I practiced writing essays. I did research into good examples of strong Common App essays. And if you're interested, I have some resources later that I can email you with some examples of really good essays. I'd also recommend you refine your school list. So everybody's probably heard of the 20% safeties, 50% targets, 30% reaches rule. But I think this rule is actually really important because you need to make sure that the majority of your efforts are spent in schools you actually have a chance of getting into and you really like, and those are your targets. And although there might be examples of people shotgunning like 12 or 13 Ivy Leagues and T20 schools, and getting into one of them, you might not be in that same case scenario, and you might end up going to a safety you didn't really like that much. So my suggestion is spend a lot of time on your targets and make sure you have safeties that you would actually enjoy going to. And if you have time, you can shotgun reaches. That's absolutely an okay strategy, but just make sure that you're not spending a lot of time on your reaches and basically no time on your targets. And from May to June, you also want to start asking for recommendations. And this is really, 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 really important. You want to ask early, otherwise the teacher might kind of fill up their recommendation list and they might not have room for you. So by mid-June, I wrote out about 5 to 10 Common App topic drafts. So they don't have to be good. You can just put them aside for now and focus on refining your school list. You just want to make sure that anything you think of that could be a potentially good Common App essay, you write that down. And you write down a full 500 to 1,000 word essay. Overwriting is actually always better than underwriting, because when you overwrite, you can always cut it down. When you underwrite, it's harder to find out where you want to add content. And if anyone's interested, there was a really good essay from the book Bird by Bird called Expletive Drafts. And what this essay was about was, you want to write your first few drafts as if you don't care at all about how they look or how they sound. Write them as if like a first grader wrote them. Just write them really, really bad. And when you kind of focus on writing a really bad draft, just getting the content down, you're not so worried about stylistic elements that you don't have good content on a page in the first place. So just make sure that the content's good in these first few drafts, and make sure you just write about anything that you're interested in. And you also want to decide what you're applying for and what strategy you want to focus on. And I will talk a little bit more about strategy later on. So here's how I chose schools. So when I was finding schools, I looked for a school I could see myself attending. So I did not go to a single school where I did not apply to a single school where I could not see myself like there as a student. I also looked for ones that were good for my major or potential career path. I also wanted to vibe with the student body and faculty. So I visited almost every single school I applied to. And if I didn't feel it, I didn't apply. Also, location matters a lot for me. I prefer schools that are either suburban or urban or close to a city center. I'm not super big into rural schools, although there were a few exceptions just because I really liked the schools when I visited. And also, you have to make sure that it has the resources you cared about. So does anybody have any questions so far? I know I just went through a ton of things.
Yeah, I do. I'm not sure if you're gonna cover this later,
Mhm.
but oh wait, are you gonna talk about recommendations later?
I'm going to be talking about like process for recommendations, and I do have a little section on it, but I might not touch on the specific part you want to touch upon. So I just recommend you ask the question now, just in case.
Right. So my question was, like, it's like kind of two parts. So my first part is like, do you recommend us asking like sophomore year teachers if like we feel like they really liked us? And then my second part is like, did you ask any sophomore year teachers?
Yeah. So Nellie and Andy can also provide some input on this. So I personally almost asked a sophomore year teacher, but then I ended up going with a junior year. So I don't think there's anything wrong. I do know somebody who did ask a sophomore year teacher, and she got into a pretty good school. Um, so I can't really give you a hard recommendation on this, because I'm not in the admissions officer's eyes. Like, I don't know how they see this in particular. But what I do know is, preferably you do want to look for a junior year teacher. That is generally the preference. But if you feel like the sophomore year teacher can absolutely write you an incredible recommendation that cannot be replicated by other teachers, I think you can go for it. I mean, I have not heard anybody get rejected just for having a sophomore year teacher um, write them a recommendation. And also, there's like a very specific process I talk about for recommendations later on. That might help answer your question too. But if Nellie and Andy also want to provide some input on their experiences.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I personally think that it's best to choose junior year teachers because not only is the like the intensity between sophomore year and junior year is like so drastic, and also like as you guys know, and also yeah, I just think it's a lot better to choose junior year teachers. Like for me, I ended up going with like 3 recommendations because like I had Mr. Barry do one of my recommendations, but the reason why I chose Mr. Barry was because my junior year he was also my student what's it called, student council advisor. So like I was still carrying a connection with him, and he could speak to my abilities on student council, which I thought which was like really beneficial. But like if you have a sophomore year teacher and there's no like real connection you have with them junior year, like I would definitely not do a sophomore year teacher. I definitely think junior year teachers are better and what you should look for.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I was just muted. I would also like to add that there is a way for, as long as a teacher doesn't hate you, I think there's a pretty good way to get any teacher to write a really good recommendation, and it's all based on the letter that you write. Not the letter, but I guess like the recommendation form that you write, and I'll touch upon that later. So here's a resource pit stop, and this is where I think everybody should take some notes on. These are some things I found super, super helpful in the college admissions process. So Reddit applying to college, although it is a cesspool of anxiety and worry sometimes, there are some really good posts on there. And I'm talking about like genuinely, like really, really, really good posts that will help you a lot. So the first user I recommend you check out is William the Reader. And he is an verified admissions officer at like a T5 school, top 5 school. And he touches upon a lot of the problems he sees with student essays. And he's like very brutally honest about the admissions process. I highly recommend you check out his posts. The second one is Scholar Grade. So Scholar Grade is an admissions consultant who has a huge essay series on how you can kind of like plan out your Common App essay. And he goes into way more detail than I ever could in a Zoom session. So I highly recommend you check out his user 200 Reddit A2C. If you haven't already, you will hear about College Essay Guy at some point. He's always one of the top search results. So my recommendation would be to read his articles carefully. So some of them are really good, but some of them are also kind of strange. Like he recommended students for the short answers, like talk about like what's your favorite item. One of them was like the Iron Man heart in my chest, and I just don't know how well that would actually work in real life. So he has some like pretty wonky recommendations sometimes, but overall his stuff's pretty good. And he has a free like Common App essay series, which he provides you materials and brainstorming things that I thought were pretty helpful. Also, I would highly recommend you ask seniors who have gone through the process before. That was extremely crucial for me. I talked to a lot of seniors and people who are already in college, and they helped me so much with the process. And hopefully I am acting in a similar capacity for you all and giving you all some advice you might not have known about before. But definitely ask for people who've gone through the process before. They are such a huge help. The fourth, I guess, resource is Hack the College Essay by John Dewis. So if you search it up, it's just a free PDF. It's about 17, 18 pages, I think. And this guy goes through all of the important elements of writing a very true to yourself college essay. I found it extremely helpful for me personally, and it really changed my perspective on what made a good Common App essay good. And then finally, Escape Essay Hell is a website, and I guess the author of the website, the author of the website, she also has a bunch of books, but I don't really think they're necessary because all of her blog posts basically cover everything you need to know. But if you want to, you can probably find her books online, or you can buy them. It's really up to you. Okay, so summer, this is a really critical period for you. This is where you use time to your advantage to kind of mull over ideas and really get a head start on all your classmates who might be in something in the chat. Oh yeah, Tejas also put something in the chat. There is also a really good Reddit user called Admissions Mom. She's really good. She's also a consultant. She has a really, really good college timeline too. Although I found her timeline was a little bit, I guess, on the late side. I like to keep things with a very, very high buffer in order to make sure that there are no bad things that happen and that I have a lot of contingency plans. But yeah, so in the summer, and if you don't want to talk out loud, I guess you can also send questions in the chat. I'll answer those too. So in the summer, so late June, pick up those essays that you wrote in mid-June, like your 10, 20, I don't know, 30 essays that you wrote, and narrow down your topics, your 2 or 3 favorites, redraft, and have a second pair of eyes look at them. So for me, this was super, super, super important. I was really bad at decision making for what essay I wanted to have. So I wrote like dozens of different essay topics. And then I narrowed it down to like 4 or 5 essay topics, and having another like set of eyes look at them and tell me completely honestly which one they liked more and why they liked it more really helped me kind of narrow it down. And so I guess just letting you all know beforehand, because I'll touch upon this later on, I did write an essay about cooking tomato sauce, and I'll talk about why I wrote that. But having other people look at the essay and tell me, okay, this one is better than these ones for XYZ reasons is really important. I would highly recommend you have your parents look at these essays. And so a lot of people are like, don't get your parents too involved, they might be too controlling. But from my experience, what I found is that your parents know your writing voice really, really well, because they live with you all the time. They know you, you've grown up with them, and they're able to call you out on your BS if you write an essay that just does not sound like yourself. And trust me, when you write an essay that does not sound like yourself, it's really easy to tell that you don't actually sound like that in real life. I mean, unless you're like Leonardo DiCaprio, but I'm guessing you're not. So I would highly recommend you get a second pair of eyes on these, and definitely make sure to have somebody you trust look at them. So I would also say in late June, that's when you start writing your teacher recommendation forms. So these are crucial to get in early. You want to be hyper specific and focus on stories that your teacher can retell in their letters. So this is the part I was going to talk about for how you can make basically any teacher recommendation at least not bad. So I think I've read some friends like teacher recommendation forms. What I found was sometimes a mistake is you don't put enough stories into these forms. So you mostly just talk about vague generalities like, oh, I like this XYZ subject about the class, but you don't give a very specific story. So for example, in my AP Lang recommendation letter, I gave a very specific story about a time I turned a class project into a rap song. And I detailed every little thing that I remembered about it and made it really easy for them to go back and pick a story out of it. So the biggest thing is people remember stories. If anything you should take away from this, it's that people remember stories. Stories are the backbone of your entire application. Your entire application in general just tells a story about who you are. So you want to make sure that your teachers are also providing good, specific stories that they can use to back up their representation of who you are as a person. If you're just giving them like, oh, I liked XYZ subject because it made my brain hurt, I don't know, something like that, they're not going to be able to write very specifically about you, and that's just a very average recommendation letter, and it's not going to help you out very much. So just make sure you have those very specific stories and elements inside your recommendation forms ahead of time, so that as long as they don't hate you and they agree to write your recommendation letter, they will probably use one of those stories that you told, and that will help kind of remind them of certain memories of you in that class. And that's really, really important. Also, you want to open up your Common App account and start filling out all the basic information in late June. Just please don't put this off until the last minute. I'm just telling you, this is something you got to get done really early. And since all you juniors don't have the option to go on physical visits, do your virtual visits and reach out to like student ambassadors during late June. You kind of want to be able to narrow down your college list by this time. And also you want to pick your favorite Common App essay topic once you've narrowed down your 2 to 3 favorites. And remember, at the end of the day, you can always change later if you really want to, but just make sure that you have something you can consistently work on throughout the summer. Any questions on that slide?
To add on that, ask people who go to the colleges that you are looking into, especially if they like go to Algonquin and stuff. Like reach out to them. They'll be happy to talk to you, and you can get like the most like legit information about the college.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, what Nellie said was really important too, because a lot of the times when you're choosing your like ED college, if you ask students on campus, they will tell you a very rosy story sometimes because they work for the admissions office. But when you ask somebody who actually goes to that school, they're more willing to tell you about the negative aspects of that college. And that might change your mind a lot. So definitely make sure to take advantage of that. So in July, you want to decide the order of your activities list. So I think the 3-tiering method works the best. So you want to focus on your top 3, your middle 4, and your bottom 3. So I can't say this with certainty, but I'm pretty sure admissions officers don't look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and immediately think 1 is better than 2, which is better than 3, which is better than 4. You can think of it more in terms of like tiers. And that might actually help you personally and reduce the pressure on yourself to like do a perfect order. Just make sure your number 1 is at least truly your number 1, and then have like a good top 3, a good middle 4, and a good bottom 3. Also, make sure that your descriptions tell a story about who you are as a person. So don't just give a job description. Anybody can say like, like as president, I organized activities and ran a like fundraiser. Like anybody can say that. It's so vague. Give numbers, specific tasks done, achievements made, and people helped. So, for example, when I was talking about my experience in debate, I talked about specifically how much money was raised, how many people went to like XYZ tournaments, like rank, that specific stuff that they can use to compare. And remember, these numbers are the way that they compare your activities too. So if you just give generalities, there's no way for them to really say that you did better or worse in this activity than somebody else who has a similar profile to you. Also, you want to start filling in your awards section in July. So really early, same logic as your activities list. Make sure that these awards tell a good story about you and make sure you order them in terms of importance. So I put my international awards at the top and I put my kind of local or school awards at the bottom. And you can also cluster your awards. So if you got like multiple school awards, you can just put that in one slot to save space. I know multiple people who did that. And also send those teacher recommendation forms in July. So I know a lot of people started sending them in like late August and September. That's really late. Just make sure your teacher has it early. Even if they're not going to write it early, they'll remember you for being on top of your stuff, and they'll appreciate you for that. And so if you found your Common App essay topic of choice, redraft every 3 to 4 days. So my experience was that a new pair of eyes every other redraft was immensely helpful. I did around 21 redrafts of the essay. Although I do have to make a disclaimer, the last 5 or 6 redrafts were really smaller changes, but the previous 15 were huge changes every single time around. And keeping on a good schedule of every 3 to 4 days doing a redraft, you should be able to finish your essay in 3 times 21 is 62 days, so about 2 months. Also, it's time to start making your spreadsheet in July. And I think this is a really important section that everybody should take a lot of notes on. Every single person I think I've met had some form of a spreadsheet or way to organize their college things. Okay, so here's my spreadsheet.
Yeah. May I interject real quick?
Yeah.
All right, dope. So I just joined in a little bit late, but can you go back one slide real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Andy. Graduated last year. Currently at Yale. Joe, you're doing a really good job. So this is an incredible resource. You guys should feel really lucky because this is just the most thorough presentation I've ever seen. In terms of when you're filling out activities, 2 things. Number 1, if you go into the Common App, it's going to ask how long you spent on each activity and like how many weeks out of the year, I think, you did each activity. I remember being really stressed about like, oh, I need to find the exact amount of hours I spent. I need to round up. And if I don't round up enough, then they're not going to think that I was like super dedicated. I don't honestly I don't know why they keep that shit in there. Because like, it's really not a big of a deal. So don't stress about finding the exact amount of time you spend on each activity. And number 2, if you're really trying to gun for these ridiculously insane colleges, you need to have like every single detail kind of maximized, right? And so for these activity descriptions, when I was writing them, I did like rough drafts of each description. Like each activity description was its own mini essay. And I think that's something that's an opportunity that a lot of people kind of miss out on, but it's pretty important in terms of being able, like, 'cause you put in the work for your activities, right? You guys all spent a lot of time on these ECs. You might as well properly articulate your involvement in these as well.
Yeah,
Oh,
100%.
sorry.
Make sure
Go
you
ahead.
have a document with all your ECs and what you're going to write before you put it in the Common App, because the Common App, like, not that it happened to me, but it could like fuck up and you don't know what could happen. So make sure you have backups for everything.
True. Oh boy.
And I think two things actually that Nellie and Andy's comments kind of reminded me of, just in case. So first of all, make sure your hours add up correctly. If your hours add up to like something really ridiculously high that is just super, super like unrealistic, your admissions officer is going to notice. So if you spend like 20 hours a week on 4 activities, like each, that's gonna be really sus. Like, just don't do things like that. And the second one is, Andy provided me this resource, and I think I could probably send it in the chat during the Q&A, at the end of the Q&A. Use action words. That stuff works like a charm. It makes your like activities really pop a lot more, and it makes them just shine. So yeah. Okay.
Also, semicolons are your friend.
True.
All right. So onto spreadsheets. So this is where I recommend everybody take very thorough notes, because if I did not have the spreadsheet, I guarantee you I would have been late on a lot of my deadlines and had no idea what I was doing. So my main spreadsheet, I had my schools, how important it was to me, my score sense. Oh man, that's a typo. My score sense. So whether or not I sent us these scores yet, the due date. So when I needed to finish. So I always try to do 1 to 2 weeks before the actual deadline for buffer time. I almost never actually completed these on that due date. But knowing that I had the expectation to complete them by that due date, always made sure that I at least had the essays done at least a week before. And that's really important, because I'll talk about the gut check strategy later on. The next one is I also put the deadline in. Then I also put what major I'm applying for and the strategy of what I'm going to use when I'm applying for that major.
Joe, can I comment on the score sending?
Yeah.
So a lot of schools don't require you to, like, not a lot, but like a handful, especially those like super liberal ones like Middlebury, they don't require you to like physically send in your score until like you're accepted. So look out for those and you can save a ton of money.
Yeah, definitely. I think I also had a section in my spreadsheet where I said whether or not the school needed like these types of scores. And yeah, I ended up saving like at least $100 on not having to send scores to some schools. Next, my second spreadsheet, and sorry, this was kind of wide, so I couldn't fit it on the side. So this was my essay tracker spreadsheet. And I use this for brainstorming and seeing all the prompts in one place. And so I put it in the same sheet document as your general school tracker. So I recommend you make like an overarching sheet and then have like many like sheets at the bottom, like the tabs where you can like put each of your more specific needs in there for your tracking. There's also a lot of really good templates online you can follow, but this is the one I thought was effective. So I put the school, what the essay prompts were, my planned completion date, the word limit, what type of essay it was, what topic I chose, school-specific notes, and match notes. So I'll go over what each of these means. So on the essay required, that I just listed every single prompt, and then I highlighted the ones or boxed the ones I was going to use. Planned completion date, same thing as due date from before. Just make sure I have like a date in where I can say this is when I'm going to complete it. Word limit is really, really important. I put all the word limits in, and then I added them all together so I could see like which schools needed more words, which schools had less word counts, and so I can figure out which ones I need to spend a lot more time on. So time allocation. Type is also really important. I basically made a category of all the different types of essays that were involved, and I will talk a little bit more about this later too. And then once I created a list of all these different essay types, so like personal essays or art type essays or essays that were asking about a biggest struggle or community essays, then I could figure out which ones I could copy and paste essays into and how I could save time that way. Then I talked about my topic chosen. So that's pretty simple. Just figure out what topic you're going to write about. School-specific notes is for the YS essays, why that school is specifically has XYZ good resources or why it's beneficial. And the match notes is how you match those resources or what you can do to make you look like a better candidate for that specific YS. So any question on the essay tracker spreadsheet? Alrighty. Next. So systems matter a lot. I found spreadsheets and checklists were the most important thing for me. You might not find spreadsheets and checklists as effective, but make sure you have some systems you can use to keep track and stay on top of your stuff. Otherwise, you're going to be quickly overwhelmed and be writing really, really bad quality essays. So summer, last month, August. So ideally by the end of the month, your Common App essay is finished. This is the most important essay you'll be writing. Make sure it shines. It's sent to every school. Some schools don't even require any other essays except for your Common App. If your Common App is not good, it can kill the rest of your application. That's just the truth. It doesn't matter whether or not you're an admissions officer or not an admissions officer. This is just a simple truth. If your Common App essay is bad, it can really leave a bad taste in the reader's mouth. So make sure your Common App essay is really, really good. If you need to, you can extend the due date on when you finish your Common App essay a little bit longer. That's what buffer periods are for. But just make sure that you have something good that you want to submit when the time comes to submit it. Next, check in with your teachers to see if they need anything else. This is really important. You sent your recommendation form in July. You got it into them nice and early. They appreciate you for that. Now just see if they need anything extra. Are they looking for some help with some elaboration on certain sections? Most of the times they'll say no, but it's really helpful to do this in case they do need something and they forget to reach out to you. Then you want to start brainstorming ideas for EA and ED school supplements. And I will be talking a little bit about my EA and ED strategy in a later slide. I think it might be my next one. Then you want to finish the Common App and review multiple times with someone you trust. So all of the previous sections like awards, activities, personal information, parents, occupation, all that stuff, you want to make sure it's finished by August. This should not be something you're doing in September and October. You want to get this out of your mind as early as possible and make sure that you have somebody who can read with you from top to bottom in its entirety to make sure there's continuity on it. Then, this is a really cool tip I found, and a lot of people might not know about this, but you want to sign on to mailing lists from colleges for that demonstrated interest. So they might be sending emails to you in your email, but that does not necessarily mean that you are part of their, that you are demonstrating interest. So my recommendation is you go onto these websites, search up like U Chicago or like Northeastern mailing list. Put your email and your name in. That shows demonstrated interest. If you find a college that you really like is sending emails to you, open their emails and visit the sites that they set up for you. That's demonstrated interest. They track click-through rates. Demonstrated interest is really important in some schools. Not all schools, but some schools. So EA and ED strategy. And after this, I'm going to take like a quick 3-minute intermission. I have to get some water. I'm really thirsty.
Oh, Joe, can I ask a question to everyone?
Yeah.
How many of you guys have taken your standardized tests, especially because of COVID, and have scores that you're happy with? Because if not, add studying to Joe's summer strategy.
Oh, yeah, for sure, for sure. So I guess like so yeah, that might be a hole in the timeline that I made. And the reason why is probably because I had all my standardized testing done by May and early June. But for a lot of juniors right now, that might not be the case because of coronavirus. So yeah, definitely put that on your timeline too, or notes or whatever. Just make sure you like study and get your scores good, because a lot of like T20 schools, I hate to say this because it's not like I hate people who say T20 or bust, but it's true. If you are aiming to get into a T20 school, you will need to have good scores. It is not negotiable. It's not negotiable. So I applied to all my state schools EA because acceptance rates are higher. You get a decision back early, and it frees up time for me to work on RD. So this is actually a really, really good strategy I learned from Andrew Gao. So basically what you do is you want to split your EA into tiers. So you want to have like a safety school that you apply to EA, a target school, and like a semi-reach school, because I don't think any state schools are like truly, truly like high reaches. But you want to make sure that you have like good representation in there. And then when you get in early to one of those schools, and let's say you get your decision back in December, that can completely change your strategy for what you apply to RD. So let's say I got into a target school that I would go to over most of my safeties and some of my targets during the EA round. If I got that decision back, I can save a lot of money and effort by not applying to schools below that I was previously planning on applying to. So I definitely highly recommend you tier your EA list and make sure that you have ones that you really want to go to and apply to them EA. That's super helpful. But don't put all your eggs in one basket. So if there's a particular state school that you really, 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 really like your top choice, it might not be right for you to apply to it early. Now, this is in very few cases, because early you'll have more time to work on your essays. That's just a general truth. Like, you're not going to be able to put as much time in your essays for RD. But if you really like the school, you have to remember that the essays you write in September and October are just definitively going to be worse than the essays you write in November and December, just because, as I said before, time is your best friend. Time makes all essays better. So if you really, really like the school, and you really like a couple of these state schools, like so much that you could definitely see yourself going to them, and they are your reaches, they're your favorites, you might want to put off on applying EA and see if there's like another deadline that works better for you, especially if your essays are not that good. Also, for people who are planning on applying SCEA or single choice early action, I would only recommend you apply to these if you really, really care. So anybody who's read Admissions Officers Ask Me Anythings online, or like ever seen these situations before, you'll know that SCA is actually a way for some of these schools to recruit a lot of their legacies, donors, and athletes. So I know that Andy got in SCA or REA to Yale. So I guess his situation is like it's a pretty good situation. But for some people who are thinking of like applying SEA to like Harvard or Princeton or Yale or those schools, unless it's like your dream school and like you really want to go, you might want to consider giving some more time to write your essays. Unless you think A, you're a really good applicant for that school, B, it's your dream school and that's like the school that you want to go to for sure, and C, I guess there's no C. Just make sure that it's your dream school and you
Joe,
yeah.
Why would you apply ED or REA over ED?
Okay, so REA is pretty helpful in terms of you are not committed to that school if you get in. So ED is for those people who truly love the school. Now, I'm telling you, do not apply to ED to a school just because it has a higher acceptance rate if you don't really want to go that bad. That is a terrible, terrible strategy, and you'll be filled with regret by the end of the day. At the end of the day, you should only apply ED to a school if you really, really like it. Now, REA limits the choices you're able to apply to EA, so you can only apply to state schools EA. You can't apply to any other private universities. So, if you apply to like Harvard EA, you can REA or SEA. You cannot apply to MIT EA. But if you get in, you can apply to any other school you want. And so basically what I've heard in the past is that people who apply REA or SEA to like one of the Hypesome schools, for example, and get in, they will just only apply to other schools that are ranked higher or that they like even better than that school. And they can save a ton of money on applying to, I guess, schools that they don't really care that much about, but had to put into their application just targets and safeties. So REA is pretty effective that way. It doesn't like tie you down. But again, really, really, really make sure you want to go to that school when you REA too. It's similar to ED, not as strong as ED, but just make sure you really want to go because you do not want to waste your early chance on a school that really does not have a super high chance of accepting you in the first place. That's just a disclaimer I'm putting out there. Again, this might not apply to you. This was just what I've experienced, what I've seen other people experience. But Andy could probably offer an alternate perspective because he got an REA. And if Andy, if you want to comment on anything, I'm gonna get some more water and I'll be back in like 2 minutes.
Oh, also, with EDs, be careful about financial aid. You should really consider what you're willing to give up for financial aid. So, yeah.
So, the fall crunch. I just want to warn everybody. Your expectations are not going to prepare you for how bad it gets in the fall and winter. Anybody who's gone through the process before can back me up on this. You expect it to go kind of smoothly, or if you expect it to be bad, it is way worse and way harder than you can ever imagine it to be. So I just want to say to everybody ahead of time, just prepare and make sure you did as much stuff beforehand as you could to ease the pain and the burden.
Also, for all y'all doing fall sports, take that into even more consideration.
Exactly. So September through October, I kind of merged these 2 months because there's a very similar strategy for what you do in these 2 months. So your EA and ED essays must be finished at least 2 weeks before the deadline. That is October 15th. I'm telling you, 2 weeks before the deadline, you have to do this. Like, this is non-negotiable. If you don't have your essays like finished like at least 1 to 2 weeks before the deadline, you will have a very tough time getting in your scholarship essays and your RD essays. So make sure these are finished nice and early. If you finish them 2 weeks before the deadline, that means you have from September 1st through October 15th. That's 6 weeks. And that means you also have an extra 2 weeks of buffer, and this is when the gut check strategy comes in. So what's the gut check strategy? You're tired and overwhelmed. When you get to this 2-week buffer period, you want to put your essays aside for about a week and then come back to them later with fresh eyes. See if they are as good as you want them to be. Now, this is super, super important. Because you see your essays so often throughout the months of September and October, what ends up happening is you get really bad at figuring out whether or not these essays are actually good or whether or not the changes you're making matter. Now, if you put it aside for a week, your brain has a little bit of time to reset and look at it with new eyes. And by the time you read it after that week, you're able to much better pick out mistakes or inconsistencies or problems in your essays. I found the gut check to be extremely effective. And for essays that did not get to gut check, when I looked back on them in like March or like February, I kind of cringed a little bit because I thought, man, I could have made this a lot better, but I didn't gut check them. So on the topic of redrafts, your redrafts should be on a strict schedule every 3 to 4 days, just like the Common App. Don't push it out longer, otherwise you're not going to get enough redrafts in. But if you're too short, you're going to end up making just tiny changes overall, and you're not going to be able to change idea level top things. So for example, if you do like redrafts every day, although that might seem kind of effective in the beginning, what ends up happening is if there's a problem with your idea, you're not going to spot it. You're going to spend all your time like getting rid of like passive voice and all that stuff. It's just not that useful. Also, you want to remind your teachers about recommendations that they haven't submitted yet. This is a last case scenario, and you want to do this if it's like the end of October and they've submitted everybody else's, but they haven't submitted yours yet specifically. This could mean they forgot. I'm saying this is a very rare case scenario. Just do this if they haven't done it. And when they have, give them a gift. They deserve it. Your teachers spent a lot of time probably on your recommendations. They sifted through your absolutely ridiculously long recommendation form, and they probably wrote you something really good. So get them a gift. Be thankful for that. Also, you want to start checking your emails for interviews if you submitted some of your things early, because people start reaching out around like late October, from my experience. And you want to start writing your December deadline essays in October. So once you hit that 2 week before the deadline period, you can start working on your December deadline essays. So any questions on September through October? EA and ED is like really, really important because this could determine the rest of your path in the college application process. And
quick note that essays. Again, 2 tips. Number 1, don't be afraid to restart. I remember from my Common App, I had tunnel vision on one topic that I thought I really liked. I think I was on my 12th draft, but like something was nagging at me that I was just, this is not me and I can do better than this. And I totally started from scratch after that. And I think if I stuck with that original essay, it would have been disastrous. So really, really don't be afraid to restart, even if you put a lot of time into your draft, if you're not completely happy with it, because you can spend 3 weeks on an essay, restart it, and write like whatever on one day, spend 24 hours, and it'll be like infinitely better. What's number 2? Oh yes, so when you're redrafting, I would recommend, if you're ever deleting something, to start a new document. So on Google Docs, there's like a duplicate function or something, just because you never know if you wanted to go back to a quote that you really liked, and if you deleted it, then it's just going to be a force. So if you're ever deleting something, start a new draft.
And actually, what Andy said about the essays is really important. All the previous drafts you wrote leading up to that good draft, even if it's a different topic, was you exercising your writing and improving your writing. So don't be surprised if you wrote like 50 really bad drafts of an old essay, and then suddenly you realize you had like a eureka moment, and wrote a really good essay all in one, and then it turned out really good. Don't be spooked and think you need to redraft that one 50 times too. It's good is good. Don't mess with good stuff. All those previous drafts were also helping you to get to that point. So remember, no writing is wasted writing. That's a really important thing to know. Okay, so November, aka scholarship season. So this might not be relevant to everybody. If you do want to apply for scholarships, it's extremely relevant. So you should have already started your scholarship essays in October. Like I said, once you hit that 2-week buffer time, start on your November essays that you're going to submit on December 1st. So pick 3 to 5 schools with scholarships that you're really excited about going to, and focus on these schools. So my recommendation is, do not pick too many schools, but because scholarships are so hard to get, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So if you're going to apply to some of these schools anyways, might as well apply to them early and try to see if you can get the scholarship. So I chose Vanderbilt, BU, and USC. I really love these schools. And most, if not all, these schools have deadlines between November 15th and December 1st. And very specifically on writing scholarship essays, my recommendation is these scholarship essays are often not read by the admissions committee. So for example, the Vanderbilt, Ingram Scholarship is read by the Ingram Family Foundation. That's not the admissions committee. They're looking for something completely different in these essays than they are in your normal essays. So in your like Common App and your supplements, you can be quirky, you can write about interesting things, blah, 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 XYZ. But when you're writing some of these scholarship essays, they're looking for something a lot more serious sometimes. And the committees are also looking for people who can contribute specific things on campus. And you need to offer that in these scholarship essays. It's really different. So again, finish 2 weeks ahead of time so you can prepare for December hell. And I'm saying December really is hell for anybody who's doubting that. It's really bad. And you want to practice your interviews with guidance counselors, parents, teachers, anybody, because by this time you should be getting your EA/ED interview requests, at least November, early December. And again, use the gut check when you're writing these essays. It's super effective. Leave a buffer. Take that week off, write other essays, do other things, come back to those essays that you wrote from before, and really ask yourself, is this representative of who I am? So a quick break on timeline. So here are some tips for working effectively. I use the Pomodoro timer, which is like, I spent 50 minutes working and 10 minutes on a break, 50 minutes working, 10 minutes on a break, 50 minutes working, and then I had a long break of like an hour. This is super helpful because it keeps you on top of your work and it makes sure you don't slack off, and it guarantees you that you'll have a break. And within that 50 minutes or 25 minutes or whatever period of time that you set to work, you're super focused on your work. Second, I block off the same time every day to work on your essays without fail. So there's a really good writing blogger called Chuck Wendig, and he wrote that you're most creative when you have like a specific time of the day where you say, I'm going to write this time. I'm going to be writing like now from like 7 to 9. I'm only going to be writing on my college essays, all my college essays. And that kind of primes your brain to get ready for that writing whenever it hits that time period. So although there's nothing wrong with kind of working at like random times during the day, I found it really effective for me, particularly to block off, like for me, it was like 7 to 11 every night, just work on my college essays. Also, you want to find an ideal working environment. I cycled between library, Starbucks, and as Andy recommended, Wegmans, because they close at 12 a.m. And you can get like unlimited refills on drinks and it's just like food. So that's literally the best. But you might also want to work in your room, or you might like working at school in the cafeteria. Just make sure to build in reminders for what essay redraft is due on what day, and follow a pretty like consistent system. So any questions on that? Or does anybody want to add anything that they might find useful for this? Awesome. December. There is a 3 time period split in December from my experience. Now, you might not have the split because you might have gotten stuff done earlier. You might have a much more crunched split because you procrastinated, but this was my experience. I focused on my top schools first and foremost. I made sure those essays were started November and done before December 15th. And once you do that, you go through the clear and proceed stage. So once you cleared your first choice schools, move on to all the schools you kind of liked but are not in love with. So ideally, you have at least 3 weeks to work on 4 to 5 other schools that you're interested in. So if you finish by December 7th or December 15th, you'll have a good period of time where you can work on these schools that, oh, you know, they're pretty good reaches. You can start shotgunning schools at this point. But at least you know, like, in your heart, that you spent all the effort and work you put into your top choice schools or top choice reach schools that you really liked beforehand. And so you know that you're not slacking on those. Now, December break, you are not going to go back to school again with essays in your hand unless you have like January 15th deadlines. This is a super, super, super important week. You want to use this time to consolidate all your essay work, do final reviews, make submissions. Don't wait until the last day unless you're just doing a last minute submission. And there's nothing wrong with that. People can do that. Just, I would not recommend it unless, unless you have like free money to spare and you kind of like the school and you want to do like a last minute submission. It worked for some people. I know some people who have done last minute submissions and gone to really good schools, but I don't recommend everybody try this because, you know, it might not work out for you. So the biggest takeaway that you should take from this timeline is that a 2-week buffer will save your butt every single time, because I guarantee you will not hit that 2-week buffer on time. You will always be like a week after. But remember, a week after 2-week buffer still leaves you a week to do your gut check, which is really important. Now, that was my super long and drawn out section on timeline. I promise you the next few sections will be a little bit shorter. Does anybody have any questions on anything I've talked about from before? You can also send it in the chat if you don't want to unmute. Okie dokie. All right, now on to time for strategy and building a story. So a lot of the stuff I talked about before in regards to timeline, you know, you can get a lot of that stuff from online or from your guidance counselors. But some of this other stuff I added in were things that I wish my guidance counselors told me. Now, again, don't take everything I'm saying to be absolutely right. I am not an admissions expert, but I found that these specific guidelines and I guess like mental frameworks really helped me in terms of building the essays that I wanted to build, and they helped me get into the schools that I wanted to get into. So yeah, so your main goal is you want your application to tell a story about who you are. Again, people remember stories. They don't remember like facts, figures. I mean, they can use facts and figures to compare, but at the end of the day, people don't remember generalities or abstractions. They remember stories. So every piece of your application plays an important role in this. Your stats or your hard stats tell the admissions officer how you perform. Your extracurriculars tell them what you care about and use your time for. Your recommendations give a second opinion on you to validate your classroom performance. Remember, at the end of the day, your recommendations are about your academic performance. And your essays are super, super important because that's the last chance you get to put your voice into your application, to give a living, breathing human feeling to your application. And if you fill in this part, even if you could be perfect any other way on the paper, remember, at the end of the day, your admissions officer or your AO, which is what I'm going to be referring to it as from now on, your AO is advocating for you in an admissions committee in many of these top schools. And if they don't like you or they don't really vibe with you because you just seem like a robot from your application, it's going to be really hard for them to advocate for you and get all the other people in the AdCom to give you a unanimous vote. So make sure that your voice shines really clearly through your essays. So your essays do not have to be bragging about achievements. So I wrote about my love of cooking tomato sauce. And no, I did not extrapolate this onto super, super large like world ideas. I did not make this some kind of like super quirky or creative essay. I just wrote about how I love cooking And in particular, I've always been really into experimenting with tomato sauce. It's something that I still cook with a lot. Um, and I kind of use this to explore the side of me that other parts of the application may not have seen, which is the more experimental and creative side. Your essays also need to tell one concise story with one main idea. If you're telling like 5 stories in your Common App, they're not going to remember anything. If you're telling like 5 or 6 themes, okay, look, even the best books that are like 600 pages long, like Crime and Punishment or I don't know, War and Peace, like even those books have like one main theme and maybe some small sub themes, but one main theme. So you want to tell one story, one main theme. That's how they remember who you are. So for some people, for some of my peers, when I read their essays and they were telling like 3 or 4 stories inside and they had like 2 different themes, I found it really hard to remember them. But for some of the really good, successful essays that I read, I found that they told one story or they told about one idea and they had one really good overarching theme. And that made me really like that essay and made me really remember them. You also want to fill in the gap on some aspect of you that may be missed in other parts of the application or bolster a particularly strong trait. Remember, you are selling yourself as a particular human being after all. So again, when I wrote about tomato sauce, it's because my entire essay was all humanities and all social sciences, but not much about hard sciences or STEM, which is something that I was missing out a lot on and was relevant to the majors I was applying to. So I made sure that my tomato sauce essay kind of showed that I was also a pretty experimental person because I am that kind of person. It's just harder to see through the other parts of my application. So if you need to fill in a gap that's relevant to your major, fill in that gap. And your essays need to make you feel human. You want to come alive through a very compelling story in using literature language. So any questions on this section? Alrighty. Okay, things that aren't going to help you a whole lot. So the first one is applying for super majors and or pre-med, especially at top 20 schools, unless that's genuinely what you want to do. This is very specific for pre-med. So if you don't really care about CS or econ or pre-med or law, pre-law, and you're applying for it at these top 20 schools, you're really doing yourself a disservice because these schools are not admitting you as a law student. They're not admitting you as a med student. And they have a ton of applicants who are applying for very similar majors. So it's better if you actually apply for something that you actually care about and you like when you're doing this application process, even if you don't necessarily know you're going to be majoring in that. Again, they don't expect you to know everything about your life, but you're just putting yourself in a really bad position if you apply for something you don't really care about, but it's a super popular major, and you're competing against kids with like USA Biology Olympiad finalist status or something.
Joe?
Yeah.
What do you think about applying undeclared? I know Andy applied undeclared and got into Yale. So, like, how does that factor into admissions?
Yeah, so Andy could probably add to that. So if you talk with an admissions officer or you like read an online AMA for admissions, you'll see this is a really important thing. Admissions officers are trying to build well-rounded classes, and your major plays a very big role in that. So they know that you have the potential, like a 50% chance of changing your major. But they don't want to fill an entire class of econ majors or an entire class of CS majors or an entire class of people doing biology to be pre-med. I mean, unless they're MIT and they don't really care about that much. But like most liberal arts colleges don't want everybody to be doing the same major. So if you do happen to like a major a lot that you genuinely like, that not many people are doing, I say go for it and apply for it. That's helpful. Now, the reason why applying undeclared might not be an amazing strategy for everybody is that when you apply undeclared, it's harder to structure your, I guess, application around a central theme. And I think having a central theme where you can use as a backbone for your application can be super helpful, especially at colleges that get an overwhelming amount of applicants that are looking very similar. So no offense, but there are a lot of applicants who apply CS that have like some kind of computer science award, some math award, and like have really good grades and scores and everything, and you know are really good on paper. But if like you have 20 applicants that look the exact same on paper, it's gonna be really hard to pick which one you like more. Whereas if you're interested in CS, but you're maybe also interested in the intersection of computer science and American studies or linguistics for like AI, for example, then you might have a slightly easier time applying for that unique niche. You know what I'm saying? So it's easier to put yourself into a niche and stand out when you apply for a major, for a, like not an oversubscribed major, or you apply for a major in general. But if Andy wants to add anything,
Sure.
yeah.
I would reiterate what Joe said. I would strongly discourage applying undecided. And you might be like, oh, I have no idea what I want to do in the future. How can I make a choice? And what I would say to that is there's always something that you could possibly, like, you apply for has, unless some schools, what you apply for is what you have to do. But for a lot of schools, at least for Yale too, it has no impact on your actual major. So what does that mean? It means you pick the thing that kind of resonates with whatever experience you've had in the past. For example, I picked biology and I connected it to immunology. And the reason why that was because of two things. Number one, when I was a kid, I was really into the military, and so I made this analogy that the military is just like the immune system, and how I really wanted to explore that. That's really true. Do I want to go into immunology? Hell no. But there's always something that will kind of lead you to like that applies to a certain major, and just go for it. And yeah, I would strongly disencourage applying undecided. I don't think I applied undecided for any of my apps.
Yeah, to hop on that, like, I'm also the most undecided person there is. So also be wary of the schools you're applying to. For example, if you are undecided, like, don't be applying to those like massive schools, like, because they tend to limit your ability to like explore and like see what you genuinely like. So like, especially for like liberal arts colleges, like if you're undecided, like I would look more towards like liberal arts. But yeah, don't apply undecided.
Yeah. In kind of a similar vein, if you don't want to go to business school, please don't apply to business school, you know? Or if you like don't want to go into CS, or you don't know you want to go into CS, don't apply for like Carnegie Mellon's School of like Information Science or Computer Science, whatever it's called. It's just don't do that. And also, again, don't do yourself a disservice by writing a really vague application about a super major or an oversubscribed major. You're only hurting yourself. If you truly like CS or econ or like any of the super hard sciences that feed into pre-med or something like that, go for it. Just make sure you have a niche you can write about, and use that niche very strategically.
Like I wrote about biology, and that's a really popular major, but like, again, I found my kind of reason for it, and it worked out decently. So
yeah. Also,
none of these concrete.
Also, don't be too well-rounded. You probably heard this all throughout high school. This is just false. If you're it's like this, right? Jack of all trades, master of none. If you're too well-rounded, you end up kind of disappearing into the crowd, because a lot of students want to be well-rounded. And if you're like kind of okay at everything, and you just demonstrate like a little bit of everything in your application, while that does make you, in some ways, it can make you seem like more of a human being, and it makes you seem more living and breathing on the paper. It makes you really forgettable, because then when the admissions officer looks back and goes like, what does this person represent and what do they add to the class? They can't remember. Oh, they were kind of good at this and they kind of did that, and a little bit of this, but I don't remember specifically why they are a good addition to our school. So avoid the plight of being too well-rounded. Also, this is a really, really big problem. Don't reuse your essays too much. So some schools are looking for different things, and they can tell when you reuse an essay. So if you're applying for business at one school or CS at one school, and another school you're applying for like econ, look, business and econ are really similar, but they're not the same, and the schools are not looking for the same things when you're applying to these two different majors. So if you use like a extracurricular activity essay for your business school and you copy and paste it over to the econ, it might not work as well. So just be wary about reusing your essays too much for schools that have slightly different nuances in their majors or in their school culture. Also, do not read your essays in isolation. You're going to fall into this habit really easily. I fell into this habit. I kind of read my essays on their own and I just kept redrafting them on their own. But you have to always take like time to step back, put your essays in the same order that they're going to be read by the AO, and read them together to see if they tell one cohesive story with continuity. Andy, were you going to add something to that?
Oh, no.
Oh, sorry, I heard a sound. Yeah, anybody got questions on things that might not help you? Okay. All right, what I found helpful. I'm going to speed through this section. So I made a presentation about myself as if I were pitching myself to the admissions committee, and then figured out which parts of it I liked best and used those as seeds for stories. So I basically made a personal pitch deck. It's a pretty unique strategy, I think. I don't know how many people who did that, but it helped me a lot. I also applied for something I truly enjoyed rather than random sound good majors that I may not have cared about too much. So do I definitively know I'll be majoring in anthropology, sociology, and economics in college? I don't know, you know, but I really do like those topics, and I've read a lot of books on the topics, and it's something that I really care about, and I do care about, you know, kind of the evolution of culture. So that was something that was really relevant to me, and that fit really well into my idea of social entrepreneurship. I also had multiple people look over my application in its entirety to see if the message was consistent. So I had both my parents, my guidance counselor, my teachers, and some other people that I trusted look at my application, including some seniors and people who had already graduated. So you need a second, a third pair of eyes on your application, because although you might think, man, I am the shit, like this essay is so good, this application is the best. You know, if other people read it, they might think very differently. And if you get like 3 or 4 people reading it and they all have the same reaction, you might need to reconsider your own personal stance on your application. So, essay tips. Common App. I redrafted 21 times, as I said before. Try to redraft more than 10 times. This isn't a school essay assignment. You're not going to get away doing this the night before and, you know, snickering to yourself and saying, I'm going to get an A+ on this for my deep analysis. No, it's not going to work like that. You also want to dig deep into topics that you care about. Find a story that resonates and find the meaning behind it. This is the biggest thing that all great Common App essays have. There's no one perfect structure. There's no one perfect topic, but all good essays have a story that resonates with the reader and that person who wrote it, and they found a particular meaning behind it that was not some world-ending, cure poverty, like that kind of stuff meaning, but meaning that was meaningful to that person. Also, cliches are fine if you handle them well and with a fresh perspective. Remember, there's no essay that hasn't been written, but you can write your essay with your own unique take on that. So, you know, a lot of people write about family, sports, cooking, that kind of stuff, which is honestly fine. I mean, there's a reason why they're common topics. It's because they're good topics. But a lot of people fall into the trap of writing really generic essays based on like the Costco essay that they read online. It's not going to work well for you. Like, just make sure that you have your own unique take on it. Also, this is a huge problem I've seen in a lot of people's essays. They're using all action or all thought. So just avoid this. Don't have an essay that's just all you thinking stuff in your head, unless you're like, I don't know, Nietzsche or I don't remember his name, or Carl Jung, and you're like super, super unique and everything. Just don't do all thought and don't do all action, because these people are skimming your essays. They're not reading super thoroughly. They're not going to see the symbolism in your action. It's not English class, okay? So be direct to them. Just show them what you want them to see. Also, check out the resources I talked about from above. They're invaluable. And then try the thought action format if you're stuck. This is what I used and what a lot of the people who also saw success in the application process use. That's what I see them use. Basically, you start out with an action, and then you bring in your thought about that action or the meaningfulness, and then you kind of weave in and out of action thought. So this is a kind of generic essay format sometimes if you use it to a T. However, if you're stuck on something and you don't know how to present it, it's good to present the action and then your thought or the meaning behind it. It's always effective. On your supplements, just avoid overcopying old essays, as your strategy for different schools may be different. Look for complements to your Common App, whether that's in a story, topic, or character trait. Just like how your Common App fills a gap in your application that your other parts of other part of the applications can't tell about you. Just like how your ECs fill in a gap, your supplements have to fill in a gap. So if your entire application has been saying ABC for the entire time, see if you can add in a little bit of XYZ, a sprinkle of XYZ that bolsters that ABC that you talked about in your supplements. So common topics include the Why Us essay. You will want to copy this down pretty well. I have not seen a single successful like YS essay that did not use this format, which is background story, turning point, school content, looking to the future. Background story, why you got into this, why you're interested, turning point, kind of what made you realize, well, this is the thing for me, all the stuff about the school, and then looking to the future, what you're going to do. So you can kind of leave out the looking to the future if you don't have enough space, or if it's like a 100-word YS essay. For the school content, you want to talk about the specific resource or the thing to offer, why it's unique, and then why you're a good fit. Weave this together really, really well. Okay. Also, on the elaborate on an extracurricular essay, a ton of schools have this. I just picked one EC. One thing I really liked about it, told one story. It's basically just a mini Common App. Often these essays are 100 to 150 words. Then, the struggle or challenge essay. I used a mini Common App structure. I focused on a particular detail that bugged me and expanded. So for example, I wrote about debate for the struggle or challenge because our school for a long time did not have like a super consistent system in it for debate, and we didn't have a coach or anything. And I ended up going to these debate tournaments and get roasted and embarrassed in front of a lot of these people from like these prep schools who have like 5 coaches trailing them every single round. And so I kind of used like the funny details from that. Like for example, like one detail I used in an essay was there's this one school and they brought like 7 coaches for a team that was like ranked top. And in the middle of the round, my dad walked in the room and asked us, and his coaching was asking us if we wanted Subway for lunch. And that was like a huge memory I remembered. And that detail like really stuck with me. So I kind of use that as like the backbone. It's like the kind of irony of the fact that all these people have these big coaches and everything. And, you know, my only, I guess, coach is my dad asking about Subway. So I just focused on that particular detail that bugged me, and I kind of expanded on it and turned it into an essay about how I kind of overcame that. And then the community essay is also extremely popular. I think like every other school or every 3 schools I apply to, one of them used a community essay. Again, it's just a story, but focus on your contributions and what this community means to you. You can also use super unique examples. I wrote about the rap community because I'm super involved in like rap production at the school, and I write raps with people all the time. And although it's not like a super formalized community, like, I don't know, like NHS or something, it was something that was really important to me. And there were a lot of interesting stories that came out of it. So again, contributions, the community meaning, you're not spending the entire time writing about like an interesting character from this community. All right, home stretch. And this has gone way longer than I expected it to. So apologies if you fell asleep in the middle. Here's some mistakes to avoid. So the first one, and so some of these are things that I did, and some of these things are things that other people did and told me about. So one is getting too caught up in your Common App that you don't have enough time to work on supplements. This kind of happened to me. I had such a hard time picking my Common App essay that I was constantly distracted and screwed up when I hit my supplements for ED. The next one is not reaching out to the admissions office for, who's Andrew Gao is a future? Okay. So the second one is not reaching out to the admissions office or talking with current students. So I sometimes over-relied on the internet. While the internet's nice, the internet often does not provide a full picture that you can get from talking directly with a person from that school. Now, do not make the same mistake that I did. Reach out to the admissions office or talk with a current student. In the worst case scenario, they'll remember who you are and they'll remember you contacted the office, and it'll be some level of demonstrated interest, or you'll have primed their mind for your essay later on. Chat keeps flashing. Oh, yeah, facts. Andrew Gao just wrote in the chat, if you are thinking of doing like med school, there are a lot of like combined, I don't know if they're called like BME. No, not BME. No, that's biomedical engineering. No, ignore that ignore that. There are like combined like undergrad med school programs like BS, MD. So I know Northwestern has one, Brown has one, does BU have one? Yeah, BU has one too.
Yeah, BU does.
Yeah. So all these schools have like combined programs. If you're really into med school, like just do this. You'll save so much money. You're in like the super elite track with all these other people who are really smart, and you're going to get in the workforce a lot earlier. But yeah. Also, if you spend too much time on a few schools just for some minute changes, it's not worth it. I made that mistake. I'm not going to say the specific schools because I'm kind of embarrassed about it, but I spent way too much time on some schools, and it just really was not worth my time. Next one, loading work onto break periods. Some people are going to think, yo, I'm a god. I'm so great at this. I can avoid work for a little bit, do an hour every day, and then during my December break and Thanksgiving break, just load all my work on. You are going to fail miserably. It's not going to work out for you. Trust me on this. Do your work consistently over time. Time saves all problems. As long as you give your essay enough time, you can always make it slightly better. Next is being indecisive about what topics to write about. Remember, you can probably make any topic sound good with effort. Don't be like wavering or vacillating between 3 or 4 topics and thinking, oh, which one's going to make me the ultimate applicant? Any of them probably could as long as you put the effort and work into it. Next one is relying too much on peers for essay editing and help. I'm talking about kids in like the grade below you in your grade. If you need essay editing help, you can reach out to somebody like Andy, Nellie, Andrew Gao, me, or whatever, anybody you're friends with or somebody in the grades above you or who's gone through the process before, because they will have had that back experience to look onto your essays and say, this needs to be changed, or you probably shouldn't write about this, especially since they probably talked with other students who have also gone through the process. Although your peers can be helpful for proofreading, one of the major problems that could arise is they might end up making changes that are not super helpful to your essays because they don't necessarily know what to look for.
I would also encourage relying too much on English teachers, just because, I guess, 2 things. Number one, they are English teachers and they're not reading through a college application lens. And so the advice you will get, not the most helpful, but also, at least in my experience, it was more compliments and like, oh, like, this is great. But I knew that if I really wanted to perfect this, I needed like some harsh ass criticism, and they probably won't give it to you.
Yeah. And for all those people who think like, oh, don't chase perfection. I mean, like, chase perfection. Like, at least for your Common App, you need to be a perfectionist on that. You need to make sure it's like, it's good. You want to read it and think, wow, this is somebody I would accept. And sometimes it's hard for some people because they might be caught up in little details. And I'm not saying like be a perfectionist as in, oh wait, this apostrophe is a dash apostrophe instead of like a hooked apostrophe. Like, you don't have to worry too much about that stuff, but just make sure like this is representative of who you are. And final slide at 6:31 today. So not taking enough breaks, that was my problem. I basically just kept trying to load work, and that ended up being really bad for my brain. And then I had a really long period of writer's block. I couldn't figure out why until I took a break and then came back and realized the writer's block was because I wasn't taking breaks. Next, underestimating how long it will take to finish an essay. I don't care if you're capable of writing like a 2-draft perfect essay. Expect 5 drafts for every essay at least, so you have the buffer period in case it does not turn out well. Next, putting way too much effort into schoolwork that you don't have enough time for essays. So I'm not saying like stop doing schoolwork, or like some people might start skipping school like 3 or 4 days a week to stay at home and write essays. I don't know, like, I'm not gonna name anybody specific who does this, but I'm just saying, like, if you do have like the choice between schoolwork and an essay, and you think the schoolwork is not going to be super important for you, put that work in the essay, because the essay is weighted pretty highly in the admissions process. And finally, don't overload the fall with inconsequential activities. So I know Nellie mentioned before about fall sports. If fall sports are a really big part of your application, go for it. I'm not saying don't do that. But I'm saying if like this other weird opportunity comes around and it's going to be like number 9 on your activities list, or it's at a similar level to stuff you've done before, it's just not worth it. you're just going to be wasting a lot of time, and you're going to think you're being really productive, but you're really screwing over your essays because you're not able to spend as much time on that. So, in conclusion, 46 slides later, these were all the big lessons I learned from the college admissions process. Some tips I thought might be useful for you all, and some mistakes I think you should avoid. Again, you do not have to listen to me. I am not an admissions expert. This is, however, what I have learned through the process and what I have compiled from other people who I talked to who had also learned from the process. And for all of us, we all ended up going to pretty good schools and getting into some pretty good schools. So if you follow this, you can't fail. I think I can guarantee that. But I cannot guarantee like those people how to get in the Ivy League that you're going to get into like a T20 school. But now it's time for questions and answers. And please do not be afraid to ask questions. I really don't want to leave any kind of gaps in here.
I had a question about teacher recs.
Yeah.
So, if I want to go into pre-med, should I go ask some science teachers rather than other subjects?
Yes, I would highly recommend that. And actually, some pre-med programs require you to get recommendations from specific teachers. I think actually Gao could probably provide a much more nuanced perspective on this because I think he applied for some like combined BSMD programs and that general field. If you want to.
I applied to some, but like not to like an actual extent, I'd say. I wasn't that intense about it, but I remember like BU's like combined program like had specific requirements. It was like one English, like one science, and then one language or history. So if that makes you uncomfortable, like it made me like just think about that.
One thing that I would add is that like a lot of admissions officers know that a lot of pre-med kids are going to drop, and that's just like the harsh reality of it. So the best way to go is to get one science and one humanities, because in the end they really do care about humanities.
Yeah. Unless you're like in a really unique situation where maybe all of your teachers from a certain branch of subjects dislike you, I would recommend, you go for one social science / humanities teacher and then one STEM teacher. And that covers your bases for almost any school you're applying to. The only situation where that did not happen for me was when I applied to Georgetown, and they required a very, very specific type of teacher recommendation for their business school. And so I had to like go around asking around like in mid-December, which was already kind of late, for a teacher recommendation. So in general, if you go humanities, social science, STEM, you can't really go wrong. Any other questions? And please feel free to ask anything, even if you think it's like super stupid. Like any information you have before the college admissions process matters and it helps. So.
And if there are
experience with college networking, as in with admissions officers.
Oh, I think Andy has a really good story about this.
I love how you remember, Joe. Some good memory. Yeah, I'd say when you can, definitely. Well, this is some advice that you can take on for like the rest of your life. Is that at any possible opportunity you can, make a face-to-face connection with the people that you're applying to. And so what happened with my case is Yale's admissions officer came to do a Q&A session, and for some reason 4 people showed up. I think like 50 people showed up to the Cornell one, but 4 people showed up to Yale, and I was the only junior, and so I was the only one like actually, or yeah, I was the only senior at that point, actually like imminently asking questions. And so the admissions person that ended up coming to our school was the person that read my application. And she, when I was on campus, she remembered looking at the application, recognizing my name, and therefore giving really special attention to it. And She ended up fighting for me in the committee and pretty much single-handedly carried me through the application process, all because of the fact that she remembered me from meeting me that one day at Gonk. And then in terms of, if you ever have the opportunity to do that, try to make an impression. Like, again, the premise of Joe's entire presentation is to be memorable and to have these stories you can tell. So for example, I told, in the beginning of the admission session, we were just having a casual conversation. I told her about how my sister was going to college like 20 minutes away from Yale, and I was really excited to actually apply to Yale because we'd be so close and be like, haha, blah, blah, blah. And she has a boyfriend at Yale, just like random anything that'll be a good impression. You never know when that'll come into play, and that's just general life advice. Like, always try to make an impression, and let people put a face to your name.
Yeah, that's it's very, very solid advice. Advice that I should have followed a little bit more in the college application process, but alas. So any other questions?
Quick word, by the way, if there are no questions.
This is just, can you hear me or no?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you share the presentation with me, or if anyone else wants it? That I think that'd be helpful, because I took some notes, but it's better if I have the knowledge in the presentation.
Yeah, sure. I think I'm also like releasing the full video, because there's a lot of stuff that we talked about that might not have showed up on some of the slides.
Yeah.
So I guess both avenues probably, yeah, there's gonna be a release. So,
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
any other questions? Anything specific? You can even ask anybody in college right now, because they're on the call, about their experience in college. Anything. So. All right. If no one has any questions or additional comments or things to add,
Can I say a word, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to try my best to kind of reduce the stress that some of you guys may be feeling based on some personal experience. So what Joe said today is, I was incredibly blown away by it, how thorough and how real the advice was. Like, honestly, looking back, I'd definitely pay like at least $400 for what happened tonight. This is really, really, really good information. That being said, I know it's a lot of information that could be very, very stressful. So I'm going to share a little bit about why you might be able to be excited, even, dare I say, about this application process. I'd say number one is, this is the time where you're finally able to talk about yourself. And I know for some people that's a little bit hard, but for some people, they love talking about themselves. They can, and the fact that you guys worked so hard in all of your extracurriculars, this is the time for you to finally brag about yourself and kind of get a little bit of recognition for your achievements. And when you're writing, again, be yourself. I promise you, if you're trying to be yourself, that is completely enough. And if you try to be anybody other than yourself, it's most likely gonna hurt your application. Number two, about why you should be excited about this process is, it's also a time for you to kind of reflect upon yourself, because during this process, these questions are like deep. They're your passions, your interests, your background, your history. And so this is a kind of time to kind of figure out who you are. And I remember leaving the application process with a better understanding of kind of what I wanted to be. And number three, you can make this process almost enjoyable, dare I say. I remember, again, the Wegmans thing. This is like the biggest secret in this town, because Wegmans closes at 12. And so it's also a time where you can, work with friends, and kind of chill out at cafes and everything. And so that's also something that's a little bit more tolerable. And also, like, kind of the fourth and last reason why you should be a little bit excited about this process is the fact that
also, you will always see Andy at Wegmans the weirdest time of the night.
oh yeah, that's very true. Oh yes. So instead of kind of picturing failure, a lot of people tell you to imagine the success. So when you're like really like, this is, again, Joe Zhang said, December hell is a thing. And so when you're feeling demotivated, instead of imagining what would happen if you don't get into the colleges that you wanted to get into, imagine yourself being on campus, and I'm assuming you did some visits. Like, imagine being in a really place you found really cool, and just the feeling of like how proud you would be. And then that kind of gives you the motivation to keep going, because this is how you end up at that place. So hopefully that does something to kind of alleviate the stress. It's not the easiest time. But again, if you start early, then you can be looking at all your friends stressed out and being very sad for them, but also like, haha, like, I get to relax, so I started earlier. So yeah, just a little bit of just my 10 cents.
I think some people are also asking questions in the chat. So I can go over some of these if you didn't see them. So somebody asked, in the Common App, should there be a balance of genuine and sarcastic voices, or do you think you should avoid sarcasm? Just please avoid sarcasm. It's really hard to tell when somebody's being sarcastic in their writing. And genuine can be funny too, if you just take a good candid moment. Somebody also asked, did you ever think to submit a rap of yours? I almost did. But I didn't, because at the end of the day, they're skimming through your essay for the first impression. And if your rap does not come off in a particularly good way on the first skim, it's not going to be helpful. Like, if you ever read Kendrick Lamar's raps, on the first skim, they'll look like absolute like gibberish until you go back to analyze them. But they're not analyzing it. It's not like an English class. So I would say take risks. Be willing to write about interesting things that matter to you. There was not a single essay I wrote that I did not care about the topic or I did not like the essay. But don't go overboard with the quirkiness. Otherwise, you end up sounding like, I guess, the Costco essay. Okay, also, somebody asked, should you list every activity you've done over high school or only the ones you've done for a while? Just focus on your most recent ones, and the ones you have leadership positions in. That's like a huge thing. If you did an activity once freshman year, it's just not worth listing. It's like, you don't have any obligation to fill up 10 slots, So just quality over quantity. I know this is such a cliche term. And if you already got everything you need from this, you can leave the call if you want to. Feel free to also to like reach out to one of us, unless like Andy, Nellie, or Andrew or Gao, I don't know, Andrew Gao, or unless one of you guys like explicitly say, please don't reach out to us. Yeah, feel free to reach out to any of us. Although during the school year, I can't guarantee a reply, but yeah, definitely feel free to reach out to us. So let's see, any other questions? Write one about Vic. That's not a question. Advice on supplement media. I do not have experience in this because I was not super into art and music, and I was not going to submit an explicit rap with my application. But if anybody else had an experience with that, they can answer in the chat or they can answer in voice. And yeah, so it looks like that's all the questions. And I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. I think I'll be releasing the stuff to anybody who attended. Just shoot me an email and I'll send it. And of course, what Andy said at the end was super, super important. It does seem stressful, it does seem hard, but I'm so proud of how the process ended up. And I was really happy about what I learned about myself in the process. So it's tough, but you only learn about yourself through really tough and trying times. So again, thanks for attending. And
Wait, Joe.
yeah.
Someone asked earlier about supplemental media. What's your advice on that?
Okay, so what I've heard, and I can't give like a definitively good response on this because I did not submit supplemental media, but what I heard is if you're not applying for like a program that requires supplemental media, only submit it if it's relevant to you and it's really, really good. So if you're like applying to Yale, for example, and Yale has a really good theater program, and you have some like picture of you at like your school semifinals doing a monologue for a part you didn't get because you think it's cool, I would not recommend you submit that. So, but if you have like a super good example of you playing like a solo part, like I don't know, maybe you're like Justin Wang and you have like a solo part in Boston Youth Symphony Orchestra and you played at Carnegie Hall or something and it's a really good part, yeah, submit that. That's awesome, you know? But like I can't make a judgment on that because I did not submit it. I don't want to like mislead anybody. Just if it's not like great, I just wouldn't recommend submitting it. You don't want to clutter your application, and I'm telling you this right now. Clutter is the enemy of a good application. It makes you forgettable. So
It's also resumes too. I know it's tempting to, I guess, throw in a resume just because, you know, what if, just in case. But these AOs are going through hundreds of applications per day. Don't quote me on this. I've heard that, like, if they open up a resume and it doesn't add anything, they just get annoyed because it's like, why waste my time, you know? Definitely if you have just so many extracurriculars because you're so amazing and you can't fill up 10 slots, then that's a different story.
same thing with supplemental recommendations. If it's like,
True.
if you're adding like if you had like your chem teacher write you one and then you're having your bio teacher write you another one, like I just don't know how much that's gonna like add to your application. I wouldn't do it if I were you.
Wait, what were we saying about resumes?
Oh, just if they don't really add anything, don't bother.
One thing that I would say is that like it's helpful to like not to add even more workload to your already enormous workload, but it's helpful to just like write out a resume because like that's basically what you're doing on the Common App anyway, and that'll help you like long term in the future just to have like an outline. So like that's kind of like what I was doing. Like I was like writing my Common App, and on the side like I was also creating a resume, and then that also like helped organization and stuff.
And I think Gao gave me some really good advice on if you're making a resume, because making a resume can actually help you as a half step towards building your Common App essay list. On your resume, don't overclutter it with lots of details that tell the same story. Focus on specific details that tell a very unique picture of you that invite the other person to ask a question about that particular story, and be concise. And so I used to have like this 4-page resume that I got roasted over. And okay, look, I know my final resume was still 2 pages, which is a little bit on the longer side, but being able to cut it down and really consider which parts of it were important, I think was really helpful. If you wanted to add something.
Keep your resume to 1 page. Like, don't go beyond a page. Also, don't like. There's no need to get super fancy with it unless you're like. Maybe an exception is if you're like applying to like do like product design or something. I don't know. Like, Is that even something you can apply to do? Probably not at most places. So like the thing is with resumes is it's just supposed to be there, and like it should be something that someone glances at and then like gets like a general sense of it. Like it's almost never like this is me. It's like a quick overview that invites a conversation. So like interviews are like that, right? You give them a resume and then you like talk about it.
Definitely. But yeah, so it looks like there's no more questions. I think I will be, let me just stop recording real quick. So let me stop the share. And then I will